Now it's going up. Hey, everybody, welcome to Noble Logistics. It's me, Michael Vincent, and it is Monica Thornton. And you know what she does? She'll get all your freight, LCL and LTL, to Alaska, Guam, and Hawaii. Is that right?
That is correct. That's our specialty.
That is fantastic. And I mean, it makes obvious sense that you're based in Atlanta too, right?
Yeah, it makes complete sense that we're here in Atlanta.
I mean, was that a requirement on the business plan?
I'll share. I don't know what used to be a little secret. It isn't anymore, but
Okay.
SeaWide Express is part of AJC Logistics,
Okay.
Which is part of the AJC group of companies, and they are headquartered in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
So we started SeaWide 10 plus years ago out of their corporate office in Atlanta. So that's why we're here.
Well, you don't have to be in Hawaii or Guam or Alaska to make this happen. Although,
I mean, I wish I was.
Right? I mean, right? If you just spent like a third of the year in each, that'd be pretty sweet.
That would be great. You know, if I could go summer in Alaska and go winter in Hawaii and, skip on over to Guam a couple times a year, that'd be living the life.
That'd be fantastic. You know what? Give me your boss's number. I'll give him a suggestion. Or actually, you just did. You just gave him a suggestion. So how's it going, Monica? Tell people what's going on in your life. Everything good?
In my life, yeah.
Yeah. No, the freight of brokerage. Are you slinging freight right now? I mean, I'm going to bill this as we're just going to watch you sling freight for 25 minutes.
We've got some niche markets that we serve. So that puts you ahead of the game when you're slinging freight, to differentiate yourself over other people. So, I can't complain at all about what I do because it is different. Being different, I think, makes it a little bit easier. So, I've worked in pretty much all the realms of the freight world. So, I like this. It's, they're neat markets.
You haven't been in ocean freight for your whole career, have you?
No, I started my career as a school teacher, graduated college, fell into a job as a teacher. Wasn't my plan. I went to school to be an archaeologist. I wanted to, find sunken ships and buried treasure, and somehow became a junior high science teacher. But after about 6 or 7 years, it was time to get out. And I was sitting at a red light one day and I saw a Panther 2 truck go past. And I thought, I keep seeing more and more of their trucks. They must be doing pretty good in the freight world. And they were headquartered in the town that I lived in. So I called them up and they hired me to come be a dispatcher to the truckers.
Wow. Was Bob Poulos still there at that time?
I don't think so.
Okay. I knew Bob Poulos. Well, I still know Bob Poulos, the Happy Greek. Anyways, that doesn't matter. So that's really interesting. So from archaeology, you were going to be an archaeologist?
I was.
So you went to Marquette University. Is it the Ashland in Ohio?
It is Ashland, Ohio. So,
okay, because when I said, hey, I went to Ashland for basketball camp, why don't you come on my podcast? And you said, yeah. I was like hoping it was Ashland, Ohio.
Yeah, it was. So I lived not far from Ashland. I was teaching, and I figured out. No, I lived on the edge of Amish country, though.
Yeah, you did.
I figured out pretty quickly that if you were going to make any money being a teacher, it wasn't going to be as a high school or a junior high science teacher. You needed to get a master's. So back before online was really a thing, I was sitting up at midnight, rocking a baby next to me, taking classes online. And that was the goal. And, before, I think in my last year of working towards my master's, I quit teaching and started dispatching trucks. So, you never know what's going to happen. If
you're going to be up all night, rocking a baby, you might as well be in freight because you're going to be up all night anyway, right? I mean, you're there. Yeah. So why not? So
exactly.
So the only thing that's changed now is you're not rocking a baby anymore.
Yeah. No more babies. Yeah. Done there.
But you're still up all night slinging freight, right?
Oh yeah. The thing about the freight world is, if you want to be the person that calls it a 9 to 5, that's fine. There's some roles for that. But if you want to be successful and make money in the freight world, you need to be available. So
Gotcha. So tell us a bit about SeaWide Express. Are you guys handling all different types of freight, truckload and LCL and LTL and that type of stuff? And is it, tell us about the services there.
So SeaWide was set up um, to complement our sister company, Eagle Logistics Systems, which is the
Okay.
Puerto Rico division.
Oh, okay.
So they've been in business for over 28 years, handling dry and refrigerated goods to Puerto Rico. Um, they were calling themselves a Jones Act provider, but weren't servicing the Pacific markets. So SeaWide was set up to handle the Pacific markets, specializing in taking in small parcel, LTL, even truckload shipments where we can consolidate them into our own FAK containers, um, and then ship them to Hawaii, Guam, and Alaska. So that's our specialty. We sail containers twice weekly. We ship just about everything except for you and the stuff in your house. Um, the markets are each very unique when it comes to what ships to them. It's a lot different than logistics in the lower 48. Um, they rely on everything coming in. They're not manufacturing the kinds of goods that we rely on, for our day to day lives.
Yeah.
So, they manufacture some coffee, they manufacture some alcohol, got a lot of
What else
military.
do you need? I mean, isn't that what you need to survive?
Yeah. Yeah. You got the military base there to protect you. So, there's a lot of hospitality. There's a lot of, tourism related hotel, lots of retail, the common goods that we use every day, foods, paper goods, things like that. But we really do ship pretty much anything to those points.
Yeah. Are you NVOCC or you got assets going in there?
So, being a domestic ocean consolidator, you're only required to have a freight forwarding license.
Oh,
So
really?
we operate as a freight forwarder,
Okay.
but we are a DBA of AJC Logistics. So they operate an NVO. They have MC authority as
I got you. So you're
truckload
you're
brokerage.
going through their. I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah.
So you're not asset based. Are you running barge up to Alaska? Is that what it is?
So we do utilize all methods for these markets, but we utilize them where they're required, not necessarily where they're available. So when we talk about moving someone's LTL freight to Hawaii, Guam, Alaska, we are moving it on the vessel to provide fastest service. So we could use the barge, but it's cheaper and it takes longer. But we use the vessel. We do use the barge to southeastern Alaska. The vessel doesn't go there. Um, and then there's barge service between the Hawaiian Islands.
Well, yeah, that's the only way to get between the islands, right? You ship into one and then you got a barge between them, right?
Yep, there's one barge service in Hawaii.
Yeah, there is. There's one. So
There
I
is.
used to serve it. I used to ship floor covering to Hawaii, right? And that was it. And once you got
Yeah,
there, that's it. You have one service.
yeah. It's a that's an interesting scenario when you talk about the United States and the government and businesses and monopolies. I mean, you've got one barge service running the service between the islands, and it monopolizes that market, and I guess it's okay with everybody. What works works.
Yeah, why fix it? Well, I mean, is there a lot of people trying to break into that market? It doesn't seem like it'd be a huge market.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of people trying to break into any of the markets we service. SeaWide, when we started back in 2015, we were one of few trying to get into those markets. In the last decade or two, there are some others. Most failed. That they're not the easiest markets when you look at it. Overall from a business standpoint. When you look at things like COVID happening, that they relied on goods to still come in, and there were special rules set so that they weren't cut off from the world. That's the good thing about the Jones Act, is that these points don't get cut off, but that they definitely have their peaks and their valleys, a lot more so than most markets do on the mainland.
Gotcha. I mean, it would appear, I mean, does it make sense that they would be somewhat insulated from the same cycles that you see domestically here? I mean, because they produce so little for what they consume, right? I mean, if prices go up or something, it really doesn't matter that much to them. I mean, to the volumes there, because they've got to still have it, right?
If you think about from the consumer market, all of us in the lower 48, we are accustomed to going online and going to Amazon or Wayfair or whatever retailer online or website and buying things. And especially when they're big things, we see free shipping,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Well, there's almost always a disclaimer for these markets that says free shipping except Hawaii and Alaska.
Well, and the other thing is this: is you just don't go down to the corner store and buy stuff, right? I mean, I mean, so I did NVO. Well, I did liner service, tropical shipping into the Caribbean, into the Leeward and Windward Islands. We did NVOCC to the Greater Antilles, Central America, South America, that type of stuff. But the interesting thing was that the just the common stuff that we shipped all the time. You don't go down to the corner market and buy a new vacuum. You had to
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about, the general day-to-day stuff is found in stores. When you start talking about, buying a piece of furniture, larger things, though they're not sitting on the shelf at the store like we've been accustomed for so long to seeing. I get a lot of people that call me saying, I really want to buy this couch, but they don't ship to Hawaii. Can you help me? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot different in the consumer market there for, looking at an item and then deciding, is it worth the shipping cost?
And then the duties, or there aren't duties.
There aren't duties, no.
No, because they're the same country, right? Those
now, well, Alaska and Hawaii are domestic points, so they are no different. If I wanted to ship something from Atlanta, Georgia to somewhere in Hawaii or Alaska, it's no different than booking a shipment like you would with a carrier in the lower 48 somewhere. When you talk about Guam and Puerto Rico, Guam has customs and Puerto Rico does have an inbound tax.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
in your sales process and in your business partners, are you booking for other what would be considered domestic competition, like other LTL companies? Are they booked based on yours as your service? Not
So
all LTL companies service those markets, but they could if they were using you as an agent, right?
So if you're the type of customer that uses a TMS system, and I can speak to this because I used to sell for a 3PL. So if you're the type of customer that can enter an LTL shipment into a database and it produces, I don't know, 5 or 45 carriers, it'll produce carriers showing rates to the markets we service, but the vast majority of them are outsourcing. So they're handing off to people like us, and people don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they think, well, I saw this rate from carrier X. That means that they're going to take it and deliver it in Anchorage or Honolulu, but they're not. And when back in the day, those TMS systems they used to market as interlined, right? It would say interline, or it would have some kind of symbol, and you knew that they were going to hand off. That doesn't happen for these markets. So people really do believe that their carrier of choice is handling it. YRC would have been the biggest LTL carrier servicing these markets, actually, within their own system and network. But there's very few,
Yeah.
I can count them on one hand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I used to do as well. I used to actually handle other shipments from here to LA or to Seattle, and then hand off to a barge service
Right.
up into or across to the islands.
And I work primarily with carriers and logistics companies.
Oh, okay.
And I will, that's just kind of a choice that I made being landlocked over here in Atlanta. It made sense to call on, the national accounts that are related with logistics. But there are pros and cons. I'll never knock somebody using an LTL carrier to get their shipment to Hawaii or Alaska, because you can put it through a system like that or directly with the carrier, and they cut one pro, and you can give your customer one pro number, and there you have it, one set of paperwork, and off it goes. Um, you do end up with two pro numbers. Either we get it to our terminal, or the customer gets it to us on one pro, and then you get a second pro, but you get direct visibility once it's in SeaWide's hands, and you get better communication. You're not having to, it's the old phone game when you start adding in multiple people and each person has to call someone else to get a piece of information.
So do you advise people to do that type of thing? Because it seems like wise. Or do you guys handle, like if I want to ship something, I'm in Chattanooga, right? I'm just up the road from you. If I want to ship something out to Guam, am I calling you and your assets are handling it the whole way? Or are you utilizing an outside carrier to get it there? Or do you just say, hey, look, here's the carriers that use us. Just grab one of these guys.
So I'm gonna speak for myself as Monica, because the rest, I've got, there's 6 or 7 people on the sales team, and we all salespeople have their own approach. So, I recently was told by somebody that I won a very interesting and intricate piece of business, even though my rates were higher, because I had given them a consultative approach and they felt trust and knowledge coming from me. So when someone comes to me with a shipment, if I think it makes more sense for you to get it to my terminal, I will tell you to do that. If I think that it doesn't make a difference if I book the truck from origin versus you, then I'll tell you that too. I'm always looking for the best option for a customer when it comes to the timing, when it comes to the handling, and when it comes to the price. So,
what an odd concept to actually be an advocate for the customers that you have.
Price last. So I learned that when I started in logistics a long time ago. Never talk price until the end. If you come out of the gate with that, you're starting the relationship off on the wrong thing. So, if you wanted to move, let's say you needed to move a rock truck up to Alaska, I'm going to tell you just to book the carrier.
You mentioned that.
There's no reason for me to handle that inland and to create this middle person in the entirety of that leg of the shipment. You can get it to the port just as good as I can. You don't need to pay me to do it. Right. Now, if you have a standard piece of LTL and you're a shipper that, you only ship LTL, once every month or so, you probably don't have good LTL rates. So you probably are better to rely on me.
That makes sense. Let me ask you this. Does it ever make sense to stay on surface to Alaska?
Not really.
Ever a scenario where it makes sense to stay on land to ship to Alaska?
This topic comes up a lot. I had a request earlier or last week for a dedicated box truck over the road to Alaska. Not all points are accessible over the road to Alaska. I mean, yeah, you can get to Alaska, but that doesn't mean that truck can get to the point you're actually talking about. So, to Southeast Alaska, sometimes it's not cost effective. You want to send a 53-foot truck to Southeast Alaska, you're talking $20,000 some dollars minimum.
What are you shipping to Alaska besides oil production equipment?
Oh, they ship all kinds of stuff. there is mining, but
that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much different from Hawaii in terms of having regular retail goods, consumer goods.
I imagine that, but you're shipping a lot of stuff to support resort and tourism as well into Hawaii too, right? I mean, that's got to be a big.
And then you have to think about, if you think about truckload brokerage in the lower 48 and the kinds of customers that you're servicing, when you're shipping a product to various retailers, you're shipping product into retailers that can take a whole truckload of it. When you start looking at Hawaii, the facilities are really small. Facilities tend to not have docks. So needing a lift gate is a common need. Or they have stores will be on multi-level, kind of outdoor strip mall settings where you need to have a dolly and go upstairs. Alaska's the same way. not all the places in Alaska can need to take in that kind of volume for a retail store. So if if you're shipping car batteries into an automotive store, they don't need a 53-foot truckload of them. They need a couple pallets of them. So that it shifts a little bit in these markets where the volume changes for certain types of customers versus what they would be shipping in the lower 48.
I imagine the seasonality of different products is also off kilter with what it is in the rest of the 48, right?
So Hawaii doesn't really have fluctuations when it comes to the season. It's pretty steady. When I have a joke I always post on LinkedIn: the 4 seasons of Guam are summer, 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 and summer. When you talk about Alaska, it's a little bit different. Alaska's peak season of shipping is definitely end of spring into the early fall. So once winter sets in, somewhere around August to October, there's a special service that will take effect with every provider. It's called PFF or KFF. It means protect from freeze or keep from freezing. All that means is that instead of just using dry containers to ship dry goods to Alaska, during the winter, we actually run temp control units to prevent the inside temperature from going below freezing.
See, back in the day, all we did was leave a truck running underneath the trailer when it was against the dock. That was our protection.
That's really the biggest fluctuation in these markets is definitely Alaska. Ship as much as you can and get it up there through the middle of the year, and in the winter, everything kind of slows down a little bit until it.
But these markets are kind of so. I would imagine that you have a number of pretty steady customers, right, and have regular type shipping, right? Because they don't want to store inventory there. Right? Is that true? I mean, it would seem to me like Guam doesn't have the space. It's too expensive in Hawaii. And Alaska, bears will take it.
In Hawaii, warehousing's not common in Hawaii. Facilities are small.
That's what I mean.
We own and operate Kano Trucking in Honolulu, Hawaii. So that was an acquisition of SeaWide's about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. We do have warehousing there, but and it is a fairly good sized facility. But when you talk about what we're doing, we want freight in and freight out. So I get a lot of people will ask me if I can warehouse in LA. Right? There's not enough warehousing space in LA. I don't want that on my dock. We will fill our LA facility up before a sailing, and we'll empty it out for the sailing, and it'll just continue like clockwork. So, and the same goes for businesses. They just don't have a lot of space typically to hold a lot of inventory.
So you're running straight container freight stuff in LA. You're not doing any order management or inventory management there for those.
So we don't do inventory management. We try to stay out of that. We do have, so we have customers that do that, and we have customers where we will ship in and store their goods in Alaska or Hawaii, and then they have team members locally that will come in to do their own inventory.
So they manage their own inventory out of some of those facilities.
So we count everything by the pallet. We don't count the pieces on a pallet for someone.
I got you. So your pallet only, you don't break the pallet.
I mean, we do, but we try to avoid the inventory management part of it. So if you want to ship me a pallet of hats or pillows, and I can break down those boxes and top load it as top freight.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
because there's a benefit to that. You now aren't paying the cubic footage or the weight of that pallet if I take it out, right? So, I mean, we will break down, but as far as doing, as far as warehousing and maintaining an inventory.
Order fulfillment. You're not breaking down a pallet to do order fulfillment stuff. No, I get it. Yeah, no. When I was at Roadway Express, it was, do not break down really meant repalletize the delivery.
I had a client some time ago that wanted me to store their product and then allow contractors to come in and get however many pieces of the product they wanted at a time. And that's not, you gotta get a contract with a store to sell it for you to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That doesn't work. That does. Yeah, you get into all kinds of problems with that kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
So you've been doing this for how long? 10 years to these specific markets?
Yeah, we started SeaWide back in, I guess RGM started in April of 2015. I started in May of 2015.
That is fantastic. So no plans to move on. You really love. What's your favorite aspect of it?
I find it really easy. Like I don't know. I've sold truckload. I've
People
done it
call
as
you at like 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Go, where the hell's the ship?
not really. They really don't.
I mean,
It,
there's a
one of
there's a
one of
set there's a schedule of sailing, right? So it's just like, what do
one
you
of
want
the
me to
really
do? Call
nice
the captain?
one of the really nice things about this is that once it gets on the boat, it takes 4 or 5 days, and there's no tracking, so there's no reason to call me, right?
Yeah, there isn't. It'll probably be there Tuesdays, but still supposed to be there Tuesdays.
Yeah,
So
I can't tell you what. I mean, I could go to Vessel Tracker, and see where the vessel is, but there is no tracking at that point. So, that, I mean, that is one of the nice things. I worked in expedite when I started. That was, I need to know where my truck is every minute. Pinging on its Qualcomm, watching it on the map. Our tracking has very specific touch points. When we get it, when it goes in a container, when it sails, when it arrives. So there's not a lot of that. There is a lot of, I need this there yesterday. And 5 days to Honolulu,
how does an
yesterday's
airplane charter
a different
sound
plane.
to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of the things that I learned was going from LTL to LCL, right? I jumped from LTL to LCL. And I learned very quickly that outer routes are much bigger problem in LCL than they are LTL. I mean, you ship something to Barbados instead of, like, say, Kitts, it's an issue.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Shipping to the Caribbean and the South Pacific Islands kind of falls into our wheelhouse just because the vessels servicing our markets do also take freight out for other points. And usually people don't know who to call for that kind of stuff. But it was interesting this morning in the news, the vessel at the port of Long Beach with the containers that fell off. I don't know if you got to see that.
Yeah, I did.
I tell people, and I posted on LinkedIn this morning, that's one of the most interesting aspects, I think, in our business is when people talk about, freight claims and liability, there's not a lot that can happen to your shipment once it's in the container other than it falling overboard.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
you know,
Or being delivered to the wrong nation, because I've
or to
done
the
it.
wrong nation.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a problem at times.
Yeah.
And, it damages. I also learned that a lot of times it was, well, not a lot of times, but often enough, it was cheaper to just buy something, a new thing for the customer and reship it than to get it out of the country, back here, then over. I mean, it was just cheaper.
Yeah, these markets that we service are a little different in that they have public tariffs and they have third party auditors regulating them. So if you ship a container and let's say you get 7 days free in Hawaii to unload that container, and for some reason it's tied up and the receiver doesn't want it, it starts billing, and there's no exception to that. There's no calling your sales rep from the ocean liner and saying, hey, I need a favor. They can't. And so you can get containers that start getting demurrage and detention fees on them, where what you just said, it becomes cheaper and easier to abandon the freight
Yeah.
and
Let
start
them sell
over.
it at auction and start
Yeah.
over. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I've had that call with customers before. Like, hey, look,
It doesn't happen
get me an
often.
invoice for what this is going to be to buy a new one and ship it, because it's going to be cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah. COVID was a good example of where that probably happened the most to me in my career. I had freight that went out to some of the South Pacific Islands. And, when you talk about island nations that have indigenous people there and cultures where you're talking a few hundred or thousand people, following COVID, they didn't open a lot of those islands for a long, long time after the rest of us were moving about. because they feared getting some kind of a virus or disease that could just wipe out their entire culture from the planet.
Yeah.
So, I had one container in particular that sat for almost a year billing daily detention. And, there was not really much that could be done about that. I worked on their behalf to help them as best I could, but that can be a tough scenario. Thankfully, like I said, it does not happen often, but.
Do you have the story of the strangest thing you were asked to ship?
The strangest thing I was ever asked to ship?
Yeah.
Or
the coolest, or you have a favorite shipment?
So we shipped a 60-foot styrofoam soda bottle one time. That was fun because it really didn't weigh anything and it hung off the flatbed, and we were all paranoid it would get damaged. I did ship the coffin for a global superstar that passed away years ago. That was
you're not allowed to say who it was.
Pretty
not
interesting.
Even a hint?
No. But the strangest thing we ever shipped was 2 cadavers.
What year was it that you shipped the global super?
It's been at least 10 years because I didn't ship it at SeaWide.
Where'd you ship it to?
We did back when I started and I worked at Panther. We had a company that used to try to ship stuff that was on the no-no list, and one day I used to be the person that got all the troubled stuff, and we had this shipment, and I remember one day getting on the phone with them. They were upset with us, and I had to say, when you called in and said that you were shipping a tissue sample, a human corpse is not a tissue sample.
Yeah, but
and there are there's very specific rules and laws about shipping cadavers and bodies. We also had a driver at Panther one time that unfortunately his dad passed away, and he was out west visiting, and he said, well, can I just throw him in my cargo van and drive him back east? And I was like, yeah, no.
Yeah, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's awesome.
So we do ship ice cream to Hawaii packed in dry ice.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And it gets there frozen.
Okay. I would figure I would just set up an operation to make it there. But I guess if you're Ben and Jerry, you got to get it from New Hampshire there somehow, right?
Yep. But hey, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes, there is. And you've got the way and the will to get it done. So people call Monica. She's going to get it done.
Yes.
Monica, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Yes, I appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Next time, now that I've gotten to know you, we're going to have to come on and just rip apart the market. I mean, absolutely. I love your stuff on LinkedIn. I love following you. That's why I grab you and look, we need to get together.
I work from home, and I will continue to say that, people talk about what is not LinkedIn appropriate, what you see on LinkedIn that I post is me. I post everything that's important to me, whether it's my kids, whether it's my chickens in the backyard or my artwork. And I kind of I view LinkedIn as being kind of like the office water cooler. You can chat with people because I don't have anybody to chat with here. And, why not throw yourself out there? When you meet me in person, you'll see I'm the same way as I am online.
That's awesome. We're going to have to interview some of those chickens one of these times.
I had one on my desk this morning. I did. I was really worried you were going to say, you never know when you get on someone's show the first time, if they have a trick up their sleeve. And I was actually worried that you were going to say, okay, I have this bit where you show us what's on your desk, and I would have died. But I have my little feeder and my little food and my cup because I'm actually hand feeding a chick that has some problems. So.
Oh, well, that would have been a great show. Yeah. Awesome. What do you raise them for other people? Do you raise them just to raise them, or do you raise them for the eggs, or what?
So we started about this time last year. We got 3 laying hens just so we could have eggs, and it's an addiction. You either don't like it or you just want more. And chicken math is a funny thing because I had 3 and now I have 20.
Oh, so, wow!
Yeah. Wow. So I'm not selling them yet. There's a thing called a house chicken, which would be like the little one I'm feeding. If you have a heart and you don't want to let the pecking order take over, then you end up with house chickens. So I have a coop with 3 house chickens, we've got like a limpy one. We've got one that the roosters just, don't like. But I did get babies about 3 months ago, in order to raise and sell them. So in probably in the spring, I'll actually be selling a specific breed of chicken.
I don't know. I don't buy it. I think
Hey, everybody's got to have a side hustle.
I guess so.
When I sell one, I'll let you know, because it'll probably never happen. But
book a shipment and get a free chicken.
yeah, you get a free dozen eggs when you book a shipment with Monica.
There you go. There's your gimmick. There it is. It's awesome, Monica. Thank you so much for coming on. People, check her out on LinkedIn, Monica Thornton. You can get to her. And where do they go to book shipments, man? Because everybody needs to ship stuff to Hawaii.
Hey, man, link up with me on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message. You can go to our website, SeaWideExpress.com. There's a link there to get a quote. Yeah,
she'll make it happen. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, listening, everything. Peace and love, Monica. Thank you so much.
Thank you.